Hi guys, welcome back. Happy Wednesday. I'm so excited to be back with you and I have to start this video with just a message of gratitude for all of you. So I think I'm connected with a bunch of you in Messenger, and number one, getting to know you has been so fun, but really in the last week and a half too, I've been asking a lot of questions in terms of what do you have already from a skill set and a knowledge base in this industry versus what don't you feel like you have, and what types of content would be more helpful to you, and just a lot of stuff like that. And so it's been really fun. Number one, selfishly, it's been so fun for me to get to know you. I am very much a people person, so this is just my favorite thing in the whole wide world. But thank you so much as well for so much of your feedback, and really to kind of tell all of you what you've reflected back to me in droves, by the way. Like, I have to say, like, there's so much commonality between the feedback we've gotten. And I want to share that because I think if you maybe didn't share that feedback but are having the same experience, I just want to let you know that, like, you're not the only one maybe having trouble with that or feeling stuck with that thing. So to be super specific, what we have always done in this group and what we build in Podcast Management Academy and then in this community group, which is kind of like the free community, is always 50% podcast management skills and workflows and 50% business building. So lead generation, sales, pricing, packaging, all of the things, right? And so we've always kind of had that like half and half mentality. But I think the big thing that we've heard time and time again from folks is that in terms of the tactics, right, and the workflow and the steps and the tools in podcast management, as long as you know what you're asking and what you're looking for, you can find tutorials all over YouTube. I mean, Udemy, I don't even know how to say it, but that platform. But what a lot of you say you're not finding is kind of like the business element of it. And so that has been really great for us because just in terms of a history lesson, I mean, that has always been such a big part of what we do, right? So for context, my name is Stephanie. I will give you my quick bio in just a minute here in case you don't know who I am on your timeline. But this group, right, and Podcast Management Academy are both under the umbrella of our company, which is called Produce Your Podcast. Produce Your Podcast is a full service podcast production, editing, marketing agency. We also do strategic support in terms of marketing, growth, sponsorships, and other monetization with podcasts. And then we have Podcast Management Academy, which is really the third leg of the business where we train, coach, and certify podcast managers. Bringing that back to the business development piece, in Produce Your Podcast, we have always worked with business branded shows. So we've always lived kind of on that intersection of like podcasting and business. And that has always been our biggest differentiator from an agency point, right? Now, when it comes to podcast managers, what's really interesting was that we have always been like, we got to teach the business side of it, right? Like, it kind of feels like a no-brainer. And we're thrilled to be able to do that because we've been hearing a lot from you that can sometimes be missing. And so what we don't want is for you to have a whole lot of tactics and a whole lot of great skills and a whole lot of yeah, woohoo, and not know how to go out and really turn that into a scalable business. So the number one thing that we got feedback on was basically leads and sales. And so that's what I'm just always excited to chat about. Me specifically, my name is Stephanie. I am the Chief Revenue Officer at Produce Your Podcast. I've been with PYP for about 2 years. Prior to that, I spent just under 10 years growing a business coaching and consulting firm. And so my claim to fame at the time was I was employee number one. So it was just myself and the business owner. And I was honestly everything. Like, I was sales, I was marketing, I was service, I was a coach, I was the girl on the video and the Facebook group. And I mean, the growth of that and the experience in and of itself was really, really valuable. I want you to know that about my background because I'm qualified to sit up here and talk to you about sales. But it's also important for you to know that I have coached hundreds of small businesses from solopreneur through 8 figures, whether that's teaching the individual or training their teams or training them to scale their sales. All of that is in my background. It is what I am most passionate about. And I love podcasting. Like, I mean, even in that company, podcasting was one of our number one sources of new clients. Podcasting has always been a big part of my personal life and my professional life. And so this really is the perfect place. And that's why I love to hang out on video and say hi. And again, pop in the comments if you're here. But that's why I'm getting up here and just speaking so enthusiastically about leads and sales for all of you in your podcast manager business as well, right? So couple quick housekeeping things. And then what I want to spend our time on today is just this week. So Monday and Tuesday, I had 2 consults that sold in to work with us in Produce Your Podcast with our podcast manager services. So I want to walk you through those calls. I want to walk you through their questions and concerns, tell you a little bit in terms of how to navigate that. And there's one overarching question or one overarching lesson that I want to give to you in that training. So we're going to go there in just a minute. Really quick in terms of housekeeping. So we got a number of really cool things happening in the group this week. Number one, if you are, so about 30%, about a third of this group are aspiring podcast managers. What that means is you are either pivoting from an unrelated field into podcast management. A lot of you are virtual assistants who are either adding podcast management to your portfolio of services, or you're switching from kind of generalized VA into specifically podcast management and podcast management only. So we have a free PDF guide. It is called Create and Build Your Podcast Management Business. And for those of you that are the inspiring camp, this is totally for you. So it is ready. I'm so excited to share it with you. I will tell you, I personally jumped the gun a little bit in that we could have spent another 3-4 days like building out a landing page and doing all these things. I just really want you guys to have that information. So I will email that to you directly if you would like it. Either comment below, let me know so I can message you and get your email and do all that, or just send me a message. I will see it. I always check my message requests as well. So reach out to me, but that is ready and I am pumped to give that to you. Secondly, for those of you that are current podcast managers, we also are working on something for you that I think we should have ready for you and posted in the group by the end of this week. So if I zoom 50,000 feet out in this industry, when we say podcast manager or podcast management, sorry guys, it is evening my time. I'm in Eastern, so end of day brain. But when you say those terms, it's still new enough in this industry that there's not kind of like a universally agreed upon definition. I mean, even if you Google it, right, you'll see a lot of different variations that kind of all say the same thing, but like also not really. And so what we want to do in this group is we want to be so clear in terms of how do we define podcast manager and podcast management so you know where we're coming from. Also give you the language when someone asks you, hey, what do you do as a podcast manager? And similarly, we want to really define what the workflows are. So the big thing for those of you that are current podcast managers, the feedback that you've given us is like, I mean, there's 18 million things that I can do with podcast management. Which ones do I play up? Are there any that I don't need to be utilizing? How do I talk about this with clients in a way that makes sense to them? And specifically, like, what is the order of operations for me to really do this thing and do it well? So what we're doing is we've essentially just taken our exact workflow from our client managers in our agency. And when I say client manager, they are podcast managers, right? But they're client facing. So our internal language is client manager. But we have pulled their exact workflow. We're cleaning it up a little bit, making it look pretty. And then we will drop that into this group, because if you're a current podcast manager, I think it would be helpful to see from like an efficiencies standpoint, but also like check how we're defining podcast management. I mean, if you ever look into the Podcast Management Academy with us, it's also a good way to understand how we're all defining these terms. How can you be quicker, more efficient, better, faster, stronger, whatever, in terms of what you're doing? And again, give you some extra language so that when you go out in the world, you know how to talk about these things, right? So really excited about those guides. Again, if you are wanting the Create and Build Your Podcast Manager Business PDF guide, just either comment below and I'll message you, or just send me a message. Let me know you're looking for the guide. And then for those of you that are already working in the industry, we've got that workflow worksheet coming to you as well. So you can see A to Z how we run it and stack up your process against it and see if there's maybe room for efficiencies or anything else. All right, so let's talk sales. Really pumped. I do have to tell you guys as well, I mentioned it's evening for me. This ring light here is It is doing all the work it can because I'm kind of sitting in a dark-ish room because there is no sunlight. So anyway, hopefully I might be blind by the end of this, but that's okay because you guys are going to get a really awesome sales training. So let's talk through, like I said, just my calls this week that have signed on to work with us and our internal podcast managers, aka our client managers. So when you go out into the world and you are positioning yourself and you're selling yourself, right? The number one benefit of working with you that you will hear time and time again is you give people their time back. And when people have their time back, they get their focus back and they get their bandwidth back, right? You will often hear people kind of share that surface level, right, pain point with you as to why they're thinking about hiring a podcast manager in the first place. Where most podcast managers really struggle in the sales process is they try really hard to just sell that surface level concern, right? Or that surface level pain point. What will differentiate you is understanding the questions to ask and how to dig underneath and deeper than just that surface level pain point. The reason that is so important is because every podcast manager out there, and I say this with all of the you can do it and all the positivity in the world, but to be quite frank with you, every podcast manager in the entire world can save someone time. It's not enough to differentiate you, and it's not enough to set yourself apart from the competition. So if you are talking to someone and they mention that they are shopping around, they've had some conversations, they have some conversations ahead, guess what? A lot of those other people are also just selling to the surface level pain point, which means the playing field is even, right? If everybody just kind of does the same thing and there's no differentiators, oftentimes what will happen is that client will try to default to the cheapest option because all the options seem to be the same, right? So I don't want you competing on price, right? Like that's not why you get into business, whether you're a part-time business, full-time business, side hustle, whatever. We don't compete on price because quite frankly, it is not the way to win when it comes to sales. Being the cheapest solution, I mean, that probably doesn't even feel good to you to be like, well, yeah, I mean, I do just as good work, but I charge an eighth of the cost. Like, who wants to be in that position, right? So what you want to think about is you want to dig underneath the surface level pain point. This is a lot of how questions. This is a lot of why questions. And honestly, my personal take on it, I'm a positivity seller at the end of the day. There's a lot to be said in terms of sales of like taking that pain point and like pressing on it a little bit and trying to really like get them into that pain. I personally don't want to just leave people there, right? I am very much of the camp, and I've always taught sales this way: get them into the pain, but then pull them out, right? I am a big person as well on selling the transformation, leaving them feeling hopeful at the end of the call and leaving them feeling like someone finally gets it. Okay. So, my call on Monday, to kind of put this into practice and tell you a little bit more about what this means. So, my call on Monday was a man. He has a podcast. He works in kind of a specific niche in the software industry. And so the big thing for him is like he is spending, oh my gosh, like 3 hours alone on editing. And then there's like another 2 hours in terms of like marketing asset creation and publishing and scheduling and all of the things that a podcast manager would do, right? So he is spending probably 5 to 6 hours a week right now on this tactical stuff. And it is pulling him down, man. Like it is not his expertise. He is not a podcast manager. And so now he's at a place where he is just so frustrated with having that time spent that he's like, I got to get this monkey off my back, right? Like, I got to get this off my plate. Like, I'm tired of it. It's sucking my energy. It's taking my time. Not about it. So same thing there. His surface level, what he came to us with and the language he was using was, I'm spending so much time on this that I can't focus on the other areas. Okay, great. Now, most people are going to just sell to that and just keep it there. They're going to go into their pitch. They're going to say, I saved my client 7 hours a week and blah, blah. And he's going to go to the next conversation and they're going to say the same exact thing. So for him, the way that I like to talk about it was I said, I totally hear you. And I also hear the frustration in your voice because you're spending a lot of hours per week doing something that's, number one, not your genius zone. And number two, like, it's not really benefiting you, right? Like you could be spending that time growing your business, growing the podcast, doing a number of other things, right? Like, am I hearing that correctly? He says, yes. And what we're looking for in the sales conversation are those moments of, yes, you're hearing me right. Yes, that resonates with me. Yes, you're understanding me. So I'm giving him a lot of those opportunities to say yes, right? Then I said to him, okay, so when you started this podcast, I mean, what was the goal, right? Because it sounds like when it comes to the podcast, you're working on all of this stuff, but you're not working on the overarching goals. So, I mean, walk me through when you launched this thing, like, what was it supposed to be doing for you? And so what was really interesting in that moment was he went from kind of this frustrated, he was kind of like built over. Like, I noticed he was kind of like looking off to the side. Like, the body language wasn't so positive. And so when I said, bring me back to when you were initially setting that goal, I saw him lean in. And that's always a really good sign in sales. That's just the nonverbal communication stuff coming in. It's all natural to us, right? So when someone kind of like leans in, or maybe their hand talkers or their face lights up, right? These are all really good signs that you're kind of bringing them out of that pain into more a positive space where they can make a decision from. So I asked him about the initial goals. For him specifically, it was building his brand, increasing his visibility. Both of those two things build authority for him. So when big companies come and they're hiring him for whatever tech thing he does, it positions him very well and actually helps him to get various bids and proposals. And then the third element of it was that he brings in guests to be interviewed, and he wants to do some long-term networking, maybe some future partnerships, things like that with these guests. So now we're talking about what's possible. We're talking about the exciting parts of this podcast. What does he want it to do? He's starting to light up. Body language is getting a little bit more positive, right? So now we need to really showcase the difference between what's happening now and what he wants to have happen. When someone says press on the pain in sales, yes, but I really like to focus on that middle part, right? Like, here's the pain, here's what we want to have happen. Let's talk about this, right? Let's build the bridge. So again, what I said to him was, okay, that makes sense. So what I'm hearing, and again, just confirm for me that I'm understanding, because I want to serve you and I want to really help you with this. If we can get all of this admin work off of your back, which is about 3 to 5 hours, it sounds like that time is going to be redirected back into building the brand and visibility, really remaining present with your guests. What else are you going to do with all your time back? Like, what else are you going to do to make this thing so amazing now that you don't have this dead weight dragging you down? So now again, he's talking through, okay, well, if I were to do that, here's what else is over here. And what's really interesting for him again was the relationship with the guests. And so I just said to him, okay, I'm hearing so much frustration with the editing, and you're saying you want to network with these guests, but like, you're telling me there's a disconnect now in terms of interviewing. Like, what does that mean? And you can always ask, what does that mean? How do you mean by that is a big one. It sounds kind of funny, but how sometimes can be a little more friendly sounding than why. And the big thing that came up was that every time he's in those interviews, he's only thinking about the editing time. He was like, I want to be so present on these interviews, but quite literally, I'm talking to these people and all I can think about is the fact that it's going to take me 3 hours to edit this and I have to do that tonight. Boom. That's the thing, right? Getting this out of the way is going to allow him to really get to all of those bigger goals. That's what I mean by getting beyond just the surface level. Why is that important to you? How does that look if we can get that changed? Okay, assuming that you move forward and we can solve this for you, what do you do with that time back? Right? That's what I mean by getting underneath the surface level. And I so wish I would have recorded that call, because I'm like, I wonder if I could like edit it and like, I don't know, block him out and like change his voice to protect his privacy. But I would love for you guys to see and hear some of that stuff. So I don't know, maybe I can work something out on the next one and we can like somehow make them anonymous. I don't really know, but we'll try. So that was number one. Second example, and I'll try and keep this quick, though I will say, like, not being long-winded is quite hard for me, so bear with me. But the second one is a call that I had yesterday. So this is a woman who has a co-host. And what's really interesting with her, so in Produce Your Podcast, we had just done a marketing campaign, a webinar, and a program enrollment for what's called the Sponsorship Circle. So we actually coach podcast hosts of business branded podcasts, pricing, packaging, going out, securing, and scaling sponsorship dollars for their podcast, right? So she had seen like our marketing around that. And so she had come to the call and booked it to talk about monetization, probably the sponsorship circle and things like that. What was so interesting about that call was, we got on the call, we were kind of talking back and forth, and she just kept saying about kind of time being so limited, right? And not having any time. And I just kept hearing this time thing. And so I kind of said to her, I was like, I really want to value and honor what you're saying right now. And one of the things that you keep bringing up is this whole thing around time. And it sounds like there's something else happening that's kind of making the time piece a little inflammatory for you. Can you give me more detail on that? Because it sounds like it's holding you back from a lot of different things. And so she had said in response to that, yes, I want to monetize this thing. I want to grow this thing, but I'm the person doing everything. So she was editing, she was creating marketing assets, she's scheduling release, she's writing the emails, all of the stuff again that quite literally a podcast manager would do for her. And so she had come into that call being like, okay, well, I want my podcast to monetize and I want to try and cover these costs. But when we started talking about what that means, she was too overwhelmed because there's no time, right? And there's no time, surface level thing. So I walked her back through and I said, okay, well, what's really underneath the timing piece of it, right? For her, and this is really interesting, everything that she does, she's a person who really holds herself to a high level, right? She's well respected in her role. She's quite frankly never done anything that's not gone well. I mean, so that's really like a part of her is like, I'm an accomplished business person and I have this thing over here that quite frankly, it's like it's sucking me dry. Like it's taking all of my time. And because that's taking her time, she's pulled out of her genius zone. Her background was in marketing. She can't figure out how to market the podcast because she's like trying to edit it. Right. So similarly there, I talked a lot and I said, well, you're a person and you said this earlier, like you're a person who does excellent things. Like everything you do is to a high degree. I don't think, unless I missed it, that in your background, you are also a sound engineer, a podcast editor, and a podcast manager. I said, you're the thing that you do. And she said, yeah, that's where I'm getting stuck. Like I just feel like it's this heavy thing that I have to do all the time. And it takes so much time and I don't enjoy it. But like we're kind of bootstrapped right now. So I'm trying to monetize this thing, but now there's 1,000 different things on my plate. So in that conversation, again, a little bit different because she didn't quite come to us initially for the podcast management piece. What I had done in that moment was, again, reflect back to her, right? Okay. So it sounds like your overarching goal for this is you want to monetize this show. And I get the sense that you believe in this, right? And I hear that when I listen to your episodes, like you are passionate about the work that you do. But you're also doing a lot of back end kind of admin podcast management work that is now pulling you out of your genius zone and down into the weeds. And you're kind of feeling like you're in a catch-22 because that needs to get done, but now you can't do all this stuff over here. Am I fair in saying that? Am I hearing you correctly? Yes, right? So again, we're getting those agreements throughout the sales call. So in that regard, and I'll do a follow-up video in terms of like talking through the pricing piece and stuff, because I don't know all of your individual pricing just yet. What I asked her in that moment was, okay, so if you can get this back-end admin, et cetera, stuff that is weighing you down off of your plate, it sounds like you are going to redirect that time into the things that are going to grow your brand, build your business, and do what you love. Have you already thought through the delegation and the investment into the podcast for that? Just ask her if she's had that thought. Now, she does have a co-host. So I had to say, is this part of your internal conversations? That is going to be a really important question that I want to put a pin in because otherwise I'll keep you guys here all night long. And I don't think you really want that, but let me know. So anyway, she had gone through and she said, we are talking about it a little bit. My co-host knows I'm spending a lot of time on this right now. I don't think that she knows in detail how much time that's taking, but we are open to investing. Great. That's the number one thing. Now, that is very specific in this instance because there was a co-host who was not on that call. So she's not the only decision maker there. But even for my guy on Monday, have you considered delegating some of this stuff out and investing in that process? Because what you want to do again is get them to a place where they're saying, yes, or yes, I've been thinking about it, or now I'm really thinking about it, because we're trying to switch them into a place where they're thinking about negotiating a deal and thinking about really investing in it. I also really like the verbiage around investing, not like, have you thought about what it's going to cost? Right? Which I said that with kind of like a funny face and a tone, but there's a difference in saying, okay, so you're doing all of this and you want this. Where are you in the process of wanting to delegate and invest in that? Is that important to you? Right? You, when you're in your conversations, can also say, okay, so you want to do X, Y, and Z, but you're getting bogged down with all of these things over here. I mean, certainly you can delegate that. You can hire a podcast manager to get that off your plate. But I mean, really, the question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all, and 10 being like, yes, amazing, let's go. Like, how important is it to you to get that stuff off of your plate so you can go and do the other thing, right? There's a couple questions that we're asking to shift them into a mindset of investing and delegating and getting some of those pain points off of them, right? So I'm going to take a pause there because I just gave you a lot. So let me quickly give you just like the takeaways. And if you want to watch this twice or you want to chat with me in Messenger about it, we can certainly ground this down. I don't have so specific examples with like each of you individually. And thank you for watching. But here's what I really want you to think about in your conversations, right? At your core function as a podcast manager, you are saving people time and giving them bandwidth back by taking some of these processes and tactics off of their plate. That is what they're going to come to you with. You are going to use that, but the way that you will sell them in is by getting underneath that surface level pain point and understanding them on an even deeper level. That is what no one else is doing in these sales conversations. So you need to ask a lot of questions around, okay, so what does that look like right now? What do you want this thing to be, right? If you can get these things off of your plate, what are you going to do? What are the goals? What is the vision? What are you so excited to accomplish? And then emphasizing that back to them, right? You told me that if you can get those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever hours off of your plate each week on the podcast processes, you're going to really be able to work on client acquisition, serving more clients. You're going to cut down your calendar, which is going to give you more of that mental bandwidth back. Am I understanding that correctly, right? Am I hearing you in terms of what you need? Yes. So again, we talked about going underneath the surface level concerns and pain points, and also seeding in these questions and these re-emphasis of the things that they're saying in the call. So you're getting them to say yes to you before you ever give them the actual sale that they need to say yes to, right? So I hope this was helpful. As you guys know, I love sales and I love business development. And I love helping you make business development work for you. So if these examples are helpful, definitely let me know. If sometimes the real life examples are less helpful to you and you just need the like brass tacks teaching, let me know as well. Like I said, we are totally open. I want to test giving you the examples and with the teaching. If it's helpful, amazing. If it's not the thing you love the most, certainly let me know. But we are here to serve. So again, I just want to give you a huge thank you for hanging out with me, number one. And number two, for being a member of this group. And for those of you that are also in Eastern and this is evening for you, I'm sending you even double gratitude because I know your evenings are probably your personal time and you chose to hang out with me and hang out here in the group. And that just means the world to us. So thank you for being you. I appreciate you. If you have any questions, certainly drop them in the comments below, and everybody have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.